everyone, and welcome to the NB Fam channel. If this is your first time here, NB New Brunswick, because we're in New Brunswick, Canada. Fam, because it's mostly about my family, a little bit about motorcycles. It's supposed to be about me losing weight. But hey, you can also be part of the fam too. Today we're reviewing the 1999 ZRX-1100 that I picked up this spring. It's a nice bike. It's been a little bit abused, but I thought I'd give kind of a review of what it's like to own the bike and where I'm coming from. I'm a guy who loves sort of standard motorcycles. I like old bikes. I do like cruisers. I've got a Harley. I've got actually I got my Harley, and then I inherited my dad's Harley. So mostly I kind of putt around on a Road King Classic, and I'm not a real speed demon by any means. But this bike, I don't know, it always appealed to me. So when I was a resident in Halifax, Nova Scotia, I saw one of these on Spring Garden Road. I think back in like 2000. It must have been 2005, I guess, because that's when I started there. But I fell in love with the way it looked, and it took me a while to figure out what it was. I knew it was Kawasaki because it was green, but you couldn't find them for sale at that time. And I'm not a person who buys new motorcycles anyway. But yeah, so that was sort of where I was coming from. I'm going to shut up with the narration for a second and let you listen to it accelerate, and then we'll sort of break down the different things I think about this bike. So let's start by talking about speed. I'm used to slower bikes. I don't ride fast, and when I picked this up I was a little bit nervous because it is obviously a sportier bike. Now it is a carbureted bike from the 1990s, but nonetheless, when you read the reviews, people mostly talk about this as a muscle bike. I don't really agree with that. I would call it like a sport-oriented standard, I think would be the best sort of way to classify it. I was worried it would be twitchy. I've ridden some 600s. I've ridden some muscle bikes as well. Actually, one of my first road bikes was a Suzuki Madura 1200 that had something like 120 horsepower. This thing started with, I believe, 96 horsepower, and then the guy's done an exhaust, presumably jetted the carb as well. It looks like it's a full exhaust, and I'd guess it's like 105 maybe. So I was a little worried, getting back into a faster bike, but I was worried for not. This is not a extremely fast bike. It's very easy to ride at normal commuting speeds. It's a little bit twitchy on gear changes, especially between first and second. You just have to be cautious. I think it's probably adjustable, and it's probably related to the clutch pull settings that I have on the bike. And I might frig around with it over the summer, but it's just one of those things. I think you just get used to it. But it's not like pulling power wheelies on the highway or anything like that. And it seems to cruise on the highway maybe a little faster. I would usually ride 110 kilometers an hour, which would be 65, I think, if you were if you're in the States. 65 miles an hour. This might go a little bit faster. Sort of, it likes to settle in around 120, 130 maybe. So you just have to be a little bit cautious that you're not breaking the speed limit. So yeah, speed is fine. It's fun. I had toyed with the idea of getting a ZX-14R, like the Kawasaki version of Hayabusa. But the economy crashed and I broke. We also I'm a fee-for-service doctor, and we're working around 50%. So the money that I'm making is basically paying my mortgage and my power bills. But B, our roads aren't great. There's a lot of you'll notice a lot of potholes, a lot of and a lot of wildlife. I don't know. So can I really justify buying a bike that's designed to go 400 kilometers an hour if I tend to ride at 110 on the highway and 50 kilometers an hour on the back roads, and I like sticking to the back roads. I'm kind of here for the scenery. Maybe someday I'll get one. Maybe if I had a better fiscal situation, maybe I would. But right now, this is sporty enough for me. Certainly for this year, anyway. Like a doofus here, I pulled in to get gas, left my GoPro running, and recorded my credit card. So yeah, I've been working on edits. You'll notice some transitions and stuff. Let me know what you think. Let's talk about the brakes. The brakes are decent. The front brakes are awesome, actually, on this bike. The rear brakes are horrendous, and I thought it was just the way it was built. There's nothing, and then it's like locking the rear wheel. But I just realized after looking at it that the rear brake pad is kind of pretty much burned away. The front brakes are really good. The problem here in New Brunswick, obviously, is that our roads are poor, and the you'll notice there's quite a bit of grit on the corners and that kind of thing. It's very easy to wash out your front wheel if you lock that front brake on gravel or grit or whatnot. And I rely on the rear brake quite a bit. It's almost like riding a dirt bike in some places. So I'm going to replace that brake pad, and hopefully that will solve the issue. But I can tell the back brake is weaker than than maybe it should be. Alright, if you're old like me, comfort's a big thing. So I'm not that old. I'm only 39, for God's sake, but I am built like a 90-year-old man. I've got a lot of miles on me. I spend a lot of nights up working. I think that's where I think you age when you're awake, and I don't get much beauty rest. Comfort on this bike is really good. It's a sporty position. You're sitting with your knees in front of your feet quite significantly. One of the bikes I ride a lot is a 1978 CB750, which is it's a standard bike, but with a slightly sporty riding position. This one's a little bit more than that. It's by no means a sport bike. It's not like a 600 where your feet are sort of tucked under your ass. But it's it's a fairly aggressive seating position. It's a little tough to get used to. One thing I've done a few times is go to put my feet up and put my left heel on the gear lever. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. I was watching a video, one of those Yami Noob videos, about things that real bikers should never do, and one of them was the duck waddle. When you're turning slowly in a parking lot, you put your feet down just to keep yourself stable. I disagree. If he had the knees that I have, you would realize you can't put your feet up in that position and slowly get around, because if you need to get your foot down, it's going to take you some time. Having said that, my legs aren't cramping up. I've ridden, most of my rides are about an hour long, and I've not had any issues, really. So that's sort of comfort covered. So yeah, let's talk about the sound. This bike has, I believe, a full Muzzy exhaust on it, and that exhaust looks pretty rotten. It may be the fact that it faces up to the sky a little bit and it collects water. I'm not sure, but it's a little bit rusty. Nonetheless, it's a great sounding bike. I love the CB750 sound. I love an inline 4 carbureted bike. I don't know if you can hear, maybe it's my imagination, but I feel like I can hear the difference between a carbureted and a fuel injected bike. There's just this like hiss from the carburetors sucking in the air. I don't know exactly. Maybe it's just my imagination. But this is a good sounding bike, and my wife doesn't love the sound of the Harleys. They sound like farm tractors, because essentially they use the same technology that they were using in the 1950s. But she likes this one. I like this one too. I also like a high revving bike, and this one goes up to 10,000 RPM. One of my, along with having a problem with motorcycles, I also have a problem with collecting cars that when I had some money, I couldn't turn down a good deal. So I had found a 2008 BMW M3. I think it was back in like 2013, and the guy was, they weren't asking much for it, and I decided to pick it up based entirely on the sound of the engine. It's a flat plane crank V8 4-liter that revs to like 8,200 or 8,400 RPM, I can't remember. there's something about those high revving engines. I just love the sound of them, and this bike is no exception. It sounds beautiful. It sounds like somebody playing the trumpet, if I had to come up with an analogy. But yeah, it's nice in that sense. It's really hard to talk about the ZRX without talking about the styling, and man, I think the styling's awesome on this bike. I don't know what it is. That's why I bought this bike, if I'm being 100% honest. I wanted something sportier. I wanted a standard bike to tool around on. I wanted to use it as a commuter, but the style of this bike in particular, I don't know why it speaks to me, but this one speaks to me. I think it's the shape of the tank. I love the colors on the green version. I had looked at a silver and blue version last year, and it was the 1200, so it was a little more, maybe a little more advanced than that kind of thing. But the guy wanted a little bit more money, and I wasn't really after the performance. You know, we can tinker with these things, keep them going. Japanese inline fours, keep the oil changed, keep it freshened up, lube your chain, basic maintenance stuff. But these are pretty reliable bikes. So, anyway, so definitely check these out if you're looking for a reliable, quick but not super fast, comfortable, sport-oriented standard bike. Can't go wrong. Enjoy the rest of the video. Maybe subscribe to the channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.